This is the Public Safety Subcommittee meeting. It's a continuation of last week's meeting. We didn't adjourn last week's meeting, we recessed it. And the topic that's before us this evening is the pit bull ordinance, and we will be discussing that ordinance that the Law Department has brought forward. And with that said, Mr. Clerk, would you please call the roll?
Councilor Caulfield.
Here.
Councilor Dakota.
Here.
Councilor Elliott.
Here.
3 present.
Thank you. I also like to recognize in attendance is Mayor James Milanazzo, Lowell Police Chief Ken LaValle, the Solicitor David Fenton, and we have neighborhood leaders in the audience and citizens who are concerned as well. I think what we'd like to do now is turn the focus on David Fenton, and a motion by Councilor Elliott last Tuesday, seconded by me, was to adopt an ordinance that would mirror the Boston or Worcester ordinance. And Mr. Fenton, you have done so, and we have that before us. Would you like to expound on any portions of that?
Well, there is just one thing and I think you have a letter before you having to do with an amendment that I suggested since we were kind of under the gun in getting this put together. The reference to the fines on page 7 under redemption was a misnomer, so we've corrected that by the suggested amendment. And if this goes forward, I would just recommend that change be made prior to any advertisement for publication. But as directed, we did, review both Boston and Worcester's ordinances, and they were very, very similar. And in turn, what you have before you is a compilation of both ordinances into this ordinance, which was suggested or provided in your packet, which you have before you for some consideration.
Okay, so the amendment on page 7, Article 3, Section 3, the change would include that change would impose a $100 per day fine for violation of this proposed ordinance, and that's the amendment you'd like to see implemented?
Yes, well, it's actually the paragraph preceding that, which strikes out a few words and substitutes others, but the effect of that is, as I put in the note, would impose a $100 per day fine for each day of violation. So,
any discussion from the members of the subcommittee? Councilor Elliott?
No, I don't have any questions at this point. I read through the ordinance, and it looks good to me, but I know our fellow subcommittee member, Councilor Dakota, had a meeting with some folks, as was discussed at the last subcommittee meeting, so I don't know if you want to report on how that meeting went or what the discussion was.
I will. Thank you very much. Just to clarify, it seemed that there was some confusion as to why I voted no on this motion last Tuesday. I just wanted to clarify that I felt that just simply creating an ordinance to muzzle a breed-specific animal was not would not go far enough to actually addressing the real issue that we're trying to solve here, which is to provide safety to our residents and citizens, families, children. So what I wanted to see is a conversation about muzzling, yes, but also addressing enforcement, addressing irresponsible owners, responsible owners, and those types of things. Some of the members, in fact, all of the members of our Animal Control Advisory Board have recommended against simply muzzling. So I took the opportunity to meet with 4 people today, 2 members of the neighborhood who had come and voiced their very strong opinions last week, and then 2 representatives of the MSPCA and the Animal Control Advisory Group. So thank you very much. Anne Marie is here, Kenneth Fabre is here, and Kara is not here, but Michael Kiley is here. Thank you. They took the time to meet with me for about an hour and a half this afternoon. and expressed their own issues, which seemed, after about an hour of discussion, we all seemed to come to a similar point where we do want to make sure that we are safe, our dogs are protected, our families are protected, our streets are safe, and our residents are not fearful when they go outside. And so what we would like to see happen is, if I may, present what our conclusion was. I have agreed that I would be willing to support the muzzling ordinance with the stipulation that it had a sunset clause of 6 months to a year, determined based on the subcommittee. During that time, we would have monthly reports from the animal control officers to determine its success and failure, and also to for them to provide us with data on the work that they're doing, how they're handling dogs, the number of incidents they're having, and so on and so forth. We can get that specific information from the city manager. Additionally, we would like the city manager to review for us, or perhaps present to us other options in terms of the structuring of the animal control department, so that it has more opportunities to enforce the laws that are on the books. And then after that 6 month or 1 year time, we would like to come back and discuss it again and see how we're doing. May I invite them to make sure that I've included everything? And any of the members? I'd like to invite any of the people who spoke with me today to the...
Before we
Oh,
get into any
excuse me.
discussion with the audience,
Okay.
a motion to accept the amendment as presented by Solicitor Fenton.
So moved to accept that amendment, and just for the people at home, the amendment is to include fines that was not in the original draft of.
Seconded by Councilor Dakota. Roll call, Mr. Clerk.
Counselor Caulfield?
Yes.
Counselor Dakota?
Yes.
Counselor Elliott?
Yes.
3 yeas.
And on your motion, Councilor Dakota, I fully agree that there should be a sunset clause to see if this pit bull muzzle ordinance is working properly. And if it's not working properly, I think that's only fair, and it's being responsible. So I agree wholeheartedly. So, Chief, would you like to weigh in on any of this before we have discussion, the audience?
Not really. I think that many of the arguments that have been presented last week are already well known to everybody here at the table. I've read the ordinance. I see no issues with it, and we're prepared to move forward and assist our animal control officers as anytime they need the assistance from the police department.
Thank you. Okay, Counsel?
I'm sorry, I do need to add one other point. Yeah, perhaps you can let me know if this is possible. We need to consider where there is an option here for dogs who have had safety training to be exempted, but there is no wording specifically on dogs that are coming out of animal shelters who have professional behavior evaluations. Can that be added?
Well, I'm sorry, I was just writing. Certainly some, whatever, your subcommittee recommends, we can work into it. I do have a question about the sunset clause, and that is, sunset to me means it goes away, but that's not what you're saying, I guess. What you're saying is that there would be a report as to how it's worked over the year or 6 months, whatever the period is, a report from the manager with the advice perhaps of the Animal Advisory Committee, and whether or not it then would continue in operation or subject to action. In other words, you're not saying it must go away in a year. You're
Well,
saying,
I would allow my colleagues to weigh in it. For me, I think a sunset clause is appropriate, and if the data shows that we need to continue it, we should then continue it.
Well, clarification. The way I'm looking at the sunset clause is we would look at it every 6 months to see if it's working properly. Is that what you're trying to?
Well, a sunset clause technically is an end. I don't know
Oh,
what
no,
the technical word is for
If
a
it's
forced
working,
review.
if the ordinance is working properly and in a fair way, why would you want to end it, you know?
Well, really, it's about a forced review. So 6 months or 1 year, the sunset clause is the term I'm familiar with, but if there's another term that, that has that same feel to force us to go back and review the success of the ordinance, then that I'm comfortable with a different terminology.
I would like to see review every 6 months, not,
Mandatory?
not a sunset clause. I think what the solicitor's trying to say, you have a sunset clause, that could be the, you know, the duration or the end of the ordinance, so.
So just to step back a little bit, the point of the sunset clause is, one, to make sure that we are reviewing it regularly, but also to give us an opportunity to consider other options, like reorganizing the department. And if we have the ability to reorganize the animal control department and create some better enforcement programming, then perhaps this becomes unnecessary. And that's one of the options that we need to be able to consider down the road.
Is it the intent of your motion that the council would vote one way or another? In other words, they would either vote, say, yes, we will continue it, provided it has the following changes, or something of that nature?
That would be
what you're
my,
saying?
yes, the intent of my motion, and I'm comfortable with other terminology if that's needed in order for this to pass, but I do think it's essential that we review it and make sure that the other changes that we are making, if they are able to effectively have the same impact, that we use those changes.
So if it's the wording, would you take sunset out and
Semantics.
say
So let's-
review
so
every
let's-
6 months?
Yes.
I think I understand what
You
you're
understand,
Right.
driving
okay.
at, so,
Thank
yeah,
you.
we can put something together.
Counsel?
Two things. I think it's a good idea that we do review on a 6-month or annual basis. I don't know what makes more sense, if 6 months is enough time to make that determination, or if a year will provide more data or more analysis, but whatever. What was the recommendation at that meeting or from the Animal Advisory Committee? Or was it 6 months or was it? I'm sorry, this is televised. Could you kindly go to the microphone so folks that...
We would recommend 6 months initially, so we can get an opportunity to review initial data that we would be requesting from a monthly report from Animal Control. So I think it would be best to do 6 months.
And that's fair.
Okay,
I agree to
that's
that,
fine.
but to put a sunset clause there that after 6 months, it doesn't no longer exist,
Yeah, I think the intent was to review with the option at some point in time to remove the regulation or the amendment if we feel like it's no longer necessary based on the other regulations.
So, Mr. Fenton, you are comfortable putting in language that can address this? Okay.
That's right, and it's my understanding that the council will then vote, yes, we will continue it with conditions changed A, B, C, and D, or 2, that we won't continue it.
Michael, could I just ask you one more question, or that
Yes.
I agree we should do an evaluation, but what would be the determining factor or factors that it's successful and it's working, or it's not successful and it's not working, based upon what criteria, I suppose, or what factors would we be looking at?
Well, I think that the general issue that we're looking at is enforcement of all the regulations. So I think some part of this would be that if we see that an increased reinforcement of the or enforcement of the current dangerous dog laws, if they become effective enough that maybe the muzzle law no longer is necessary to determine to keep people safe in the community. But I think part of that is really getting a sense of data that animal control is actually doing any enforcement of any of the regulations. So I think it sort of also just sort of forces this issue to come back up again. I think one of the worries, quite honestly, is that by implementing the muzzle law, that the issue is therefore no longer a major issue to continue with. So I think it's one of those ways to sort of bring the safety subcommittee or the council at large back to the table regularly to determine whether any enforcement is really happening and whether this enforcement makes sense for the city.
Or could I ask the subcommittee, that between now, because this has to be advertised, and I'll have to come back to the council in at least 2 weeks. Between that time frame, could you give us those factors that you would like to look at within a 6-month time frame, or the Animal Advisory Committee say, look, this is what these are the factors we're gonna look at within the next 6 months, and then thereafter. And I think that'll also give the animal control inspectors in the police department guidance on, what we're looking at, what we're looking to achieve.
Yeah, there's already some reports out there that we can reference from City of Springfield, for instance, that they are a conglomeration of multiple cities that have one animal control running all of the cities, and they're required to report monthly reports on activity of their officers, response time, as well as any fines that were given out for any violations. And they do that to an advisory committee from the city council. So I think we can lean towards them to get us some data that we think will help us understand how animal control is using the current regulations, whether the muzzle law or the dangerous dog laws.
Okay, that seems fair. Secondly, Chief, I'm not sure what meeting it was at when we discussed having the animal control officers under within your organization, within the police department. I was under the understanding that was going to happen, or it is going to happen. Is it an ordinance change, Mr., or question first to you, Chief, and then secondly, is it an ordinance change, or is it going to be done in the budget, which essentially will still require an ordinance change?
Well, I don't think any movement has been made in that regard. So as far as I know, the animal control officers are still within the realm of the DPW and continue to report to Mr. Snow. And I have not been aware of any changes that have been planned at this time.
Does it make sense to you to have, you'll have 2 more individuals
you'll need
under
to
you?
increase my budget by $1 million, but I'm just kidding. But other than that, I understand, the reason for moving the animal control officers into the police department. It's a force multiplier. It gives the animal control officers, in a way, a kind of authority they may be lacking by being within the realm of the DPW, and I appreciate that. I know that there was a transfer done many, many years ago. They were once, when I joined the police department in 1986, and we had this conversation before, 1984, the animal control officers were within the police department. Then they were moved eventually to the DPW. For what reason, I don't know, and they've been there ever since. So there had to be some reason for that, but I just don't know what it is.
Okay, well, I'd like to make a motion that a number of motions are following up on Councilor Dakota's suggestions. That number one, first motion is to have the animal control officers be reorganized or relocated to the police department, the 2 animal control officers.
That's what I was gonna say.
It's a motion to have the dog officers under the jurisdiction of the
Right.
police department.
And Councilor Dakota
And I agree
seconded it.
wholeheartedly, and reading the editorial yesterday, when there's an attack, a dog attack, the police are called immediately anyways. So it was kind of a little funny in the editorial. Does the dog officer call DPW for a front-end loader, or should they call the police to, because that's what they should be anyway. So, but roll call on the motion.
I'm sorry. The issue, I said a little bit facetiously about the increase in the budget, but I know there has been a lot of concerns about when to call the animal control officer out. And there's been many instances where we've called animal control and they have not responded, and it's a fiscal issue. The DPW will not send the animal control officer out to various, or the DPW will not send them out when we call, every time we call for them, because they just, they work Monday through Friday, 8, 9, 10 hours a day, I'm not quite sure, but, so that would be an issue that we would have to address.
Is there any reason why, and I know they're not under your jurisdiction at this point, that we can't have animal control on the weekends, or they stagger shifts, or is that something you'll address?
Yeah, it would be
later down
difficult
the
to
line?
me to make that assessment right now. I'd have to have that conversation with them and see exactly how they work their schedule and what is expected of them. They may have duties during the course of the week that are pretty significant that I'm not aware of, that would require both of them to work Monday through Friday at the same time.
Okay. The other issue that we did explore at a prior meeting, Chief, was having the police officers themselves write citations or write tickets for violations that they see, that they feel that they can hand out. Is that something that we should be looking at, or Mr. Fenton is? I thought there was a discussion that is permissible under the current state statute, and there was another way, as you mentioned, Chief, the multiplier effect to have
Right.
additional resources to try to address this problem.
Yeah, there would be a learning curve there, I mean, the officers right now are dependent upon calling animal control for assistance with these matters and guidance in terms of writing citations and violations. Certainly, they have that knowledge base that the officers don't currently have. So it would be an additional duty that they don't currently have. I'm not quite sure how that would all play into the reconfiguration of transferring animal control to the police department. I think we'd need to have further discussion about that.
Okay, I know first things first, we have to adopt the ordinance and then take the next step after that. But it does seem to make some sense that, when there is an issue and the police officer is there, that citations can be written. And I guess the second part of this is following up on fines. I know that fines or citations have been written and people are not paying them. I don't know, Mr. Solicitor, if you have any advice on how to collect these fines, because we can put all the resources that we want or we can possibly muster. If we're writing tickets, the police officers are writing tickets, and there's no way to collect the fines. To some degree, it's an exercise in futility, or maybe I need more clarification.
I'm sorry, I just would say that it's my understanding that in many instances, and I think Councilor Caulfield mentioned that last week, that rather than pay the fine, the dog owner just gives the dog up.
Right.
And has no inclination to retrieve the dog. So the fine that, the dog is held pending the payment of the fine, they say, well, I just won't pay the fine, keep the dog. The dog is euthanized.
Now, Councilor Elliott, you filed a motion for the animal control officers to be under the jurisdiction of the police department. And I might like to say that even if this ordinance fails, I think that motion should carry, because I think that's what those dog officers should be, under the jurisdiction of the police department. Yes.
Just answering, I think, Councilor Elliott's question, the mechanics of how you would do it, and as you say, that could be, through the manager's office addressed in the budget, and then, as you recall, we always have an implementing ordinance that implements the needed changes made by the budget, and that then would be the mechanics of how it's done.
Roll call on the motion, Mr. Clerk?
Councilor Caulfield?
Yes.
Councilor Dakota?
Yes.
Councilor Elliott?
Yes.
3 yeas.
Councilor Dakota, you have a motion too, don't you, about reviewing every six months the ordinance? We'll vote on that.
The motion actually is to have it included in the ordinance. Do we need to vote on each item separately?
Sure.
Okay, so I would like to place a motion that we review this. There's automatic review every 6 months of the muzzling ordinance.
Yeah, second, absolutely. I have the solicitor draft the language for when this goes before it goes to public hearing.
Yeah, okay. Well, certainly we can, draft something. I think that the Animal Advisory Committee is going to suggest some of the matters to be included in that, and so we'll have to work with them, I guess, and get it. But sure, we'll put something together. It's not the first time we've had this kind of a review clause, you might say, and we'll work up something, sure.
Yeah, before we take a vote on that motion, I want to stress to everyone that we want to work with everyone. Believe me, but it's. The issue out there is serious, and in the report, Mr. Kiley, you indicated that the dominant dog in Lowell is a pit bull, and it brings a lot of concerns. So it's concerns for the subcommittee, and I think the entire council, and the police department, Manager Lynch, and everyone else. We have to protect the citizens of this city. So roll call on Council Dakota's motion. Mr. Clerk?
Mr. Clerk, roll call.
Counselor Caulfield,
Yes.
Counselor Dakota,
Yes.
Counselor Elliott,
Yes.
3 yeas.
Are there any other questions? I just want to recognize Council Rita Mercier, Council Bill Martin, Council Joseph Mendonça, welcome back, Joe, and Council Patrick Murphy. So, any other questions to Solicitor Fenton regarding the audience from the subcommittee?
I don't know if there's members of the public that would like to speak.
Was it? Yeah, public, yeah. And we'll bring this forward tonight. What? Oh, sorry. Mr. Mayor?
Thank you. I don't want to cut you off, Mr. Chairman. I just want to applaud the subcommittee because I do think that you're making progress with what I'm hearing this evening and working with members of the Animal Advisory Committee. We're actually meeting again tomorrow evening. My only question is that the ordinance that's before us tonight, is it being changed to a point where the substantive nature of the ordinance is changing, so therefore we really can't accept it as a council tonight until it comes back with the changes, working with everyone, especially the Animal Advisory Committee? Or do you feel, through the chair, Attorney Fenton, that what we have before us tonight can still be advertised for public hearing in 2 weeks?
Well, excuse me, the advertisement doesn't go into the details of it. However, as you suggest, perhaps it would not be a bad idea. There's a meeting with the Animal Advisory Committee, as you indicated, tomorrow evening, and perhaps we can, between the Law Department and the Animal Advisory Committee, put some wording in so that it could, be inserted into the proposed ordinance. If you wanted then to have it come back to you, that is, say, to the full council next week.
Okay.
Mr. Mayor, that's being very fair, and we're not trying to rush this
Right.
in. We can wait until the Law Department brings in the amendment and the changes, for everyone to read, and we can just bring in a report tonight.
Correct.
And,
And I want to thank Attorney Fenton, because he's actually has been involved in every Animal Advisory Control meeting,
Yes.
so he's bringing some history to this as well, so I think that's important. I appreciate that
Yeah,
consideration.
definitely.
Thank you.
Yeah. Council, Rita
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I had the concerns, as Councilor Elliott did, in which jurisdiction does the animal control officer fall under? I didn't know if I had missed that in the first 5 minutes that I missed the meeting, but as we learned, it's still in DPW, and I do remember back when it was under the police department. I firmly believe that it should be under the jurisdiction of the police department. I will support that. That's actually true. I also feel that these two people should have uniforms. I'm not saying if they have police uniforms, but they should have uniforms. I don't know what it is about a uniform, but people respect that. I'm going to tell you that one time there was a fire in my neighborhood when I lived on Royal Street, and everybody was coming up the street, and they had to stop and back up because there was a fire and they couldn't get by. So I took it upon myself to go down the end of the street to divert the traffic that way, and because I didn't have a uniform on and I wasn't a police officer, they weren't even listening to me. I thought they would run me over. So I think that's an important aspect of it. I still have some questions about the muzzle law, and we see there's an amendment to it, and I'm wondering, is your amendment still saying that we muzzle all type of pit bull dogs? Is that where we're going with that?
That's what the solicitor has brought forward, yes.
Well, go ahead.
If I could, the muzzle requirement pertains only when the dog is off of the premises in some public area. It's to be muzzled. It's to be under a leash controlled by a qualified person, and or in the alternative, to be in some kind of a secured enclosure. So,
Unless they're in an
Okay.
enclosed enclosure, so if they go to the animal park that's fenced in, they can have the muzzle off?
There's other
Well,
dogs in there.
No,
No.
they can't.
No.
So if someone were to throw a Frisbee, the dog wouldn't be able to catch it anymore, right? Is that what we're...
That's right.
I think the key here, and I agree that something has to be done, there's no doubt about it, but I firmly believe that we could have all the laws on the books that we can to ensure the public's well-being, but if we don't have enforcement and we're not on top of it, no laws are going to matter. I firmly believe this. So my concern is, what steps are we taking to reinforce the public that the oversight will be there, the fines will be there, the people will be held accountable to their dog. I believe that people that are walking their dog on a leash, and they can have a gorilla on their leash, if they're good and responsible, they're going to obey the law. I don't know how we can deal with all the dogs that are running loose, that no matter what type of dog they are, they're not going to have a muzzle no matter what law we have. And so I really feel bad for the two people that are working diligently. I don't think it's enough.
I think, Councilor Mercia, that's the reason this subcommittee endorsed the motion brought forward by Councilor Elliott. The two animal control officers would have the support of the Lowell Police Department, whereas DPW, I mean, you tell a guy to get off a backhoe and go help the police officers, that they shouldn't be there. They should be under the jurisdiction of the police department.
I believe that.
And the police department have the eyes and ears throughout the entire city, and they can actually help the issue rather than.
I think a dog that has violated the law through no fault of their own, but for the lackadaisical attitude of their owner, they are punished with the muzzle law. I believe that then they should have a muzzle. They're considered vicious dogs. If they bit somebody, they'll be punished by wearing that muzzle. I think that people that control their animals diligently, I don't see why they should be punished with a muzzle law.
Chief?
I would also just suggest that even if these two animal control officers fall within the jurisdiction of the police department, would not consider that a panacea or would resolve all the issues we're dealing with. It would still be two animal control officers. And we work closely with them now. When the animal control personnel call for assistance, they don't call, people within the DPW to assist. Obviously, we go and we assist them in any volatile situation or where an animal is dangerous. And that's obvious. So there are benefits to having them within the police department, but then again, I don't see this to be an extraordinary move that would resolve all the issues that we're dealing with in the city, particularly when it comes to enforcement.
Yeah. Councilor Martin, did you want to say anything? No, you all said. Mayor Milanazzo, then we're going to open it up to the audience. Oh, I'm sorry. Mayor Milanazzo, then Patrick.
Just quickly, in response to what the chief said, I believe at one of our animal control meetings, we did have a police officer in attendance who actually showed us tickets that the police carry with them. And they would have, and again, I don't know if they do it now, and obviously would start from you down, but whether or not they actually, if they see a violation, they would actually ticket the dog owner. But we did have a police officer at the meeting who did indicate that that's something they used to do and would be more than willing to work with the Animal Advisory Committee to put that back in place. So.
Yeah, I agree. I was at that meeting, Mayor.
Yes, that's correct. You were. Thank you.
Councilor Murphy?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Through you to the city solicitor, if I could just get some clarification. Am I reading this correctly that there is an exemption for those dogs which have been through a training program, a nationally accredited training program, from this muzzle ordinance?
Yes, and I think Councilor Discoto has some additional suggestions along that line, but that I'm sure we'll get tomorrow night from the Animal Advisory Committee. Yeah.
Okay. And just to clarify a few issues. One is on, it was talked about in the introduction, the purpose section, about a young girl that was in an apartment building, and to get a clarification on how this would apply to people within a multifamily, whether it be their own home or a multifamily apartment, how that would apply. If you're in a fenced-in area that's sort of common to that particular property, what qualifies as...
Well, certainly, if there's a pit bull living in a 6-apartment building, there's going to be a problem. I think it's something that's, we really haven't considered, but certainly in this instance, as I recall, the child had been playing with the dog, and then the child turned to go back around, and then the dog attacked the child, if I remember correctly, the facts of this. So it's something that, we haven't addressed. I'll be candid with you, and it's going to be a continuing problem, obviously. But all dogs are not in single-family homes.
Well,
Council
yeah,
Elliott?
I think his question is, what premises, if it's in a 6 or a 5 or a 3-unit building and there's a common area, I would say the answer is probably to the individual unit that dog is confined to if they don't have any jurisdiction over the common yard. I think that's what you're referring to, right, Council Murphy?
Yeah, I'm just trying to get some clarification to make sure that it's at least clear in the ordinance.
I think it is clear in the ordinance where it says a public way. Once you take the dog off your property onto the public way.
Right,
that
but what
must-
qualifies as your
yes.
property? If you're renting in a multifamily unit, or you're living, in a condo in a multifamily unit, what qualifies as public?
Well, I think, as Councilor Elliott indicated, perhaps there'd have to be some language that once the dog is outside the particular unit of the multiple dwelling, that it would have to be muzzled. Otherwise, you wouldn't have any protection. I see no other common sense approach to it.
Okay.
I think that's a good point that we need to, can we put some language in there, Mr. Fenton, to clarify that provision? Because it does, we do have a number of multifamily dwellings and/or condominium units, so
And I'd just like to interject, this is a draft, and this is something we can work, and when we bring the final document to the council,
Sure,
I will be dotted, T will be crossed.
Right,
I
and
have
that's
to
why I'm
open
bringing
it
it
up now
forward now.
to the audience.
Yeah, I understand this is a draft, and that's why I'm
Yeah.
trying to
That's a good
point
point.
out some.
Good point.
The other is, it was mentioned about how dogs are just abandoned rather than paying the fine. And have we looked at, or is it covered by the current ordinance, have we looked at, the right to own a dog after a number of violations? Potentially suspending that right for a certain amount of time, rather than just, having the ability to, first of all, ignore paying the fines, and then just completely, forgetting about that particular dog and moving on to another.
Well, in terms of forfeiture of a dog, basically what you're asking for, and that would certainly involve due process and perhaps the requirement that damages be paid to the dog owner if you sought to, take ownership of the dog away for some reason.
well, those provisions would also be covered in the current dangerous and vicious dog ordinance that's in place, right?
Okay, that was the question.
Well,
Right.
yeah. Mhm.
I would like to open this up now to the audience. I know Anne Marie Page, the neighborhood leader in Centerville, would like to make a few comments, and anyone else who would like to. Please keep your remarks to 3 minutes or less, because we have a council meeting that's going to start within 12 minutes, so.
My name is Anne Marie Page, and I'm president of the Centerville Neighborhood Action Group. I will not read all of this because I have registered to speak at the council, but I'd like to make comment on a few things. And I think that was a very good issue that Mr. Murphy brought up, because if you are in a multifamily house, where is your property and where is the common area? If I lived in a 4-family house and my next door neighbor had a pit bull and I was afraid of the pit bull, right? I don't want to be afraid to come out and walk down the common area to go out the front door. So I think that needs some clarification. Another thing that was mentioned, which we discussed this afternoon too, was that we need to review the animal control unit. We can't even control the leash laws up in Centerville, so you're going to have a lot of fun trying to control this one. And I think what everyone said, the number one issue here tonight is the public safety. That's our top priority. My safety, your safety. That takes top priority over an animal. Now, nobody in this room wants to be cruel to any animal. I don't, you don't, and I don't think anybody else does. But we have to remember, an animal thinks like an animal, all right? A pit bull is not a pussycat. This is one big, powerful, strong animal. I do not want to walk down the street, and today I did. I was in downtown Lowell, and somebody was walking a pit bull. I stayed by my car till they walked on the other side of the street. Then when they cleared the building, I walked along. I went to enter a coffee shop on Palmer Street, and when I was 4 feet from the coffee shop, guess who comes out? The dog. He must have been going in for coffee. But I mean, I don't expect to see a pit bull when I'm walking in to a coffee shop. If I wasn't going there for a specific reason to meet someone, I wouldn't have gone in. I would have just gone back to my car. But this is a very powerful animal. It's not, I realize that the MSPCA and the Humane Society work with these animals and they see the bad, sad side, the very sad side, where people have either been cruel to them, not taken care of them, or abandoned them. But I still think we have to focus on the public safety. Public safety is the top priority here, and I do think we need to review the Animal Control Department. I think we need to have monthly reports, and I think we need to review it in 6 months. And if you're going to give this fabulous job to Chief LaValle, who already has a big job and not enough people, make sure you move the money over with it.
Okay.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Anne Marie Page. This lady right here, just give us your name, please.
My name is Penny Cartier.
What?
Penny Cartier.
Oh, okay.
You know me.
Yes.
I adopted a pit bull from Nevin's farm. He's neutered, he's wonderful. I've already been stopped by the dog officer. He's petted the dog. Mr. Caulfield, you've saw me walk my dog. You've asked me about the dog. You know he's a very nice dog. So my point is, I feel discriminated against because I am a responsible dog owner. I would never have a vicious dog. I would never allow my dog off my property. And when I walk my dog on his leash, he never bothers anybody. And I have a question. How many pit bulls that were being walked by a responsible owner have attacked anybody? Has there been attacks while a responsible dog owner has walked their dog?
There
were no on-leash attacks. Right. It's all, you know, from irresponsible dog owners that their dogs run loose. Okay? So I just don't feel that I should be, and my dog should be penalized to have to wear a muzzle when I walk him if he doesn't bother anybody. And I would be more than glad to have my dog go to the training program, but coming from Nevin's farm, he's already been, classified as not a vicious dog. And if you say that pit bulls need to be muzzled, how about all big dogs be muzzled? Because when I was walking my dog without a muzzle, a big dog that didn't have a muzzle on came and attacked my puppy and bit him in the head. The dog wasn't leashed, and he comes running after my dog. Now, my dog would never have been able to protect himself, and that was not a pit bull. So those are my concerns, and as you know, Mr. Caulfield, I am a responsible homeowner. You know exactly where I live.
Yep.
So I would just like to say that I really hope that I don't have to muzzle my dog when I walk him.
Your dog is a pit bull?
Yes?
Okay. Anyone else who'd like to come to the podium? Yes.
I wasn't planning on speaking at this meeting. I am registered to speak at the full council. I will save my comments for then, but a couple of things have come up now. In answer to the previous speaker, King Tut, she wants to know about a responsible dog owner. King Tut was owned by a responsible dog owner. The dog attacked twice. Hello?
She was not responsible. The only reason
She said she
Oh,
was.
wait a minute, we're not gonna get into a debate or an
She
argument
said
here.
she was.
Just- please-
But
please.
anyway, that's the answer to your point. A couple of things have come up. As far as in a building, my personal belief is you own a 6-apartment building, when that dog is out in the yard where it's responsible for itself and a little girl can walk in and say, "Ooh, what a pretty dog," and reach through the fence, there's the issue. That's when I want the dog muzzled. That's in my opinion. The second part of the Councilor Mercier just brought up, I couldn't care less if the dog officer is in his underwear. Give him a badge. Just get him to do the job. That's all I'm asking. Get him to do the job. Now, if you want to have give him a badge. I don't care. But I couldn't care less, because if the dog officer gets his uniform ripped, then the city's going to get a bill for $100 for a repair of the shirt. You want that? That's up to you. But that's up to the council.
In defense of the dog officers, we have 2 dog officers with a population of 104,000 people. There's 1,400 streets in the city. They work hard. They can't be everywhere at once, though. That's the problem.
We don't have to agree, Counselor, because I think the SPCA has figures that will dispute that. We have cities with the same population with 2 dog officers, and they're not having this issue. So we can disagree on that respectfully. But I'll save most of my comments for the full council.
Okay.
Thank you for your time.
Is there anyone else in the audience? Yes, come forward.
My name is Sam Weaver. I'm a student at the UMass University of Massachusetts Lowell.
Can I have your name one more time? It's slow.
Sam Weaver.
Sam Weaver?
Yeah.
Okay.
I'd just like to start by saying that, honestly, pit bulls have had a lot dumped on them in the past week, including the accusation that they're not cuddly in the least and cruel to pretty much everything. They were also accused of being the most aggressive dogs, and it was made to seem that that some, if not all, will eventually bite someone or something, as if all pits are bad dogs. I'd just like to say that, historically speaking, pit bulls were nanny dogs in the UK. Victorian family portraits show that they pretty much took care of the children. Lynn also makes exceptions for those dogs, as it was pointed out. I know I'm jumping around. I honestly had a 3-page paper that I was ready to, but trying to keep it brief. Lynn makes exceptions to the dog ordinance. It says that dogs that have passed a certain behavior course to reduce their aggressiveness will be allowed to not be muzzled. It pretty much makes it the assumption that all pit bulls are then aggressive. It's not like a dog could go into any shelter and be classified on its appearance. It honestly should come up to the individual dog's personality. And I think that that's the biggest issue right now, is that the personality of the dogs is not being taken into consideration with this. When I first started working at the shelter that I work at, I was absolutely afraid to work with pit bulls. I was horrified at the idea. And as I slowly started to warm up to it, I worked with them and I found them to be the most lovable, caring animals. And that needs to be taken into consideration too, is that animals in shelters are already under enough stress. It can be a large stress just to get a harness on them sometimes. And if you're adding a muzzle law to that, you'll most certainly send some of the dogs to their grave. And I'd just like that to be made known. As I said, I'm trying to keep it brief. So, thanks.
Thank you. Is there anyone else? Carol McCarthy from the Sacred Heart neighborhood?
Yes, good evening. My name's Carol McCarthy, and I think everyone's forgetting the issue. It's just that the pit bull has grown so popular nowadays that they outnumbered any other breed of dog in our city. And it's not the idea, it's that when they bite, they don't let go. And I'm not sure, I mean, I've seen many owners walking their pit bulls, and then he doesn't have a sign on him saying, I am a responsible dog owner. I mean, we don't know, and you don't know, and it is too bad. I feel sorry for the responsible owners. I feel sorry for the dogs that possibly would not bite, but it's just the type of bite that a pit bull gives. I think so that we need to do something to protect the citizens, to protect the children, as you would say, against the irresponsible owners, or against maybe even another dog barking at a pit bull and the pit bull attacking another dog, whether it's protecting itself, retaliating, or whatever. Thank you.
Okay. Anyone else before we recess? Before we recess this meeting, I want to thank everyone for their attendance. I want to thank David Fenton for your tireless work on this issue. And we'll bring this forward tonight to the full council with the 2 motions that was presented and the amendment to the ordinance, and there'll be other amendments as well. I think Council Murphy brought that out, multifamily housing and so forth. And I want to stress that we're not trying to steamroll something through just to get this passed. I think we want to work with everyone, and our main objective is the safety of the people who live in this city. That's our main objective. So with that said, I'll entertain a motion to, yes, David?
Just one point, and that is, with the amendments that have been discussed and with our meeting scheduled for tomorrow night, I just wonder if we'll be able to get the revisions that have been suggested to you by next week, that's all.
Oh, that's okay.
But certainly by the week after, we'd have it.
Yeah, that's fine. I don't think the subcommittee or the council has a problem with that. And I think we want to be fair with this whole issue, because once we present it to the council for a vote, we want to make sure the i's dotted, t's crossed, and we come up with something that's an ordinance we can live with. So once again, I'll entertain a motion to recess by Councilor Dakota, seconded by Councilor Elliott. Thank you very much.
That was a good point. Yeah, that was a good point.